Hi, I'm Lori Rosakis. Welcome to Video Aided Instructions Upgrade Your Writing series. This is the 10th program in the series, Avoiding Common Mistakes. Well, now that you know how to organize your ideas, create effective sentences and paragraphs, and unify your ideas with transitions, it's time to polish your writing so that it shines. Let's make sure that you directly respond to the assignment, you answer the question, and you stay on task. You'll learn how to clean up major errors in grammar and usage as well. Then you'll be able to express yourself even more clearly in writing. This is like checking yourself in the mirror before you go out and make sure that there are no stains anywhere on your outfit. Here are the issues that we'll focus on in this program. Answer the question that you've been asked, understand case, use punctuation correctly, distinguish between commonly confused words, understand comparisons and use them correctly, analyze sentences to determine the meaning of multiple meaning words, learn the rules for who, which, and that. Now, let's discuss some general guidelines for answering questions that you've been asked. Sometimes when you write, you can choose what you want to write about. But most of the time, you'll be given something to write about. You'll have a question or you'll have a prompt. This is especially common on standardized tests. If you do not directly address that question or prompt, you will not receive any credit for your answer, no matter how well you write, because they want to make sure that you are answering exactly the question that you have been asked. So it's very important to make sure that you understand that question and that you're answering that question. How can you do that? Well, the first thing is read that question several times until you are absolutely sure that you understand what you have been asked. Sometimes you might be able to ask your teacher or your instructor for clarification, but other times you may not be able to. So on some standardized tests, for example, you can't raise your hand and say, I don't understand the question. In a classroom test, the teacher may be able to guide you. But work under the assumption that you've got to make sure that you understand the question on your own. To do so, after you've read it through, once or twice, depending on how many times you need, look for some key terms. For example, words like explain or describe or analyze, classify, argue, why or why not. Look for words that identify the specific task that you've been asked to do. Then, to make sure that you understand what you have to write about, restate the question in your own words. So read it, look for the key words, and then re-say it to yourself. Next, write a topic sentence. You learned about that in a previous program. As you write your answer, refer to that topic sentence over and over to make sure that you stay on track. You don't want to start with a very good, strong topic sentence and then veer off track because you've lost your focus on it. Make sure that you stay on it. Now, as I said earlier in the program, you must answer the question that you have been asked to receive credit. This is especially true with standardized high-stake tests. That's in part because you're being tested on your ability to answer the question. If your teacher is not grading that test, the grader will not be able to read your mind. So even if you're sort of close but you're not right on task, you'll be in serious trouble. Here are the 4 most common types of questions. Recall questions, analyze questions, evaluate questions, and synthesize questions. The 4 types can be combined. For example, all essay tests ask you to recall. So what is a recall question? Well, a recall question requires you to remember key events and key facts. In this instance, you are being tested and evaluated on your ability to know information. For example, explain how to set up a web page. You've got to be able to give the specific steps, including the facts, on setting up a web page. Describe how a bill becomes a law. Same thing, you're giving the steps in order. Trace the main events in the War of 1812. And summarize the key stages in cell division. Let's look back at those questions for a moment. Explain, describe, trace, and summarize. Those are some of the words that you'll see on recall questions. And when you see explain, describe, trace, summarize, or similar words, you know that you're being asked to recall specific facts. One of the techniques that I use when I'm doing a recall question is what I call a brain dump. What I do when I see a recall question and I identify it as such, I immediately jot down on a scrap of paper all the facts that I can remember, or just little scraps of those facts. And that gets me a little bit less nervous because I have some information in front of me. So, for example, on tracing the main events in the War of 1812, I might list 4 events very quickly. Then I'll go back and write my topic sentence and add those details and other details as well. Now, analyze questions require you to separate something into parts, examine each part, and show how it relates to the whole. You're demonstrating here understanding as well as recall. So you are going to have to give a lot of facts and details, but you also have to put that together into some kind of cohesive whole that shows that you understand its overall meaning. For example, analyze the events in the short story by William Faulkner. Explore the causes and effects of the Industrial Revolution. Show why it is important to recycle. Analyze, explore, and show tell you that you have analyzed questions. Back to number 1 for a second. When you're analyzing the events in a short story, you're not merely summarizing them. You're not going to give a plot summary. First this happened, and then that happened. What you're going to do instead is to use the plot events to show the greater meaning of the story. So you might use it to show the theme. You might use it to say something about Faulkner's work. But those details function to a larger meaning. Same on exploring causes and effects and why is it important to recycle. So you're combining recall with analysis to a larger end. Evaluate questions ask you to make judgments. You make a judgment by applying a set of standards to a topic. You're also using recall and analysis because you're using facts and you're analyzing or weighing their meaning. Here are some examples. Are calculators being overemphasized in math classes? Argue yes or no. Mark Twain said, a classic is something that everybody wants to have read and nobody wants to read. Give your opinion, supporting your opinion with specific details and examples. Florence Nightingale said, you ask me why I do not write something. I think one's feelings waste themselves in words. They ought all to be distilled into actions and into actions which bring results. Agree or disagree. Go back to number 1. Argue yes or no. Number 2, give your opinion. Number 3, agree or disagree. Those are your clue words that you're being asked to evaluate. So in number 1, you might explain how calculators are used, but only to argue that they are or are not being overemphasized. Number 2, you might argue that Yeah, people do read the classics, or maybe they don't read the classics. You got to be very careful here, because what some people do is they argue both sides of the issue, and they never reach their own conclusion. You can certainly argue the opposition to show that your point is stronger, but be sure that you argue your point and try to convince your reader of your viewpoint. And as you evaluate, make judgments and give examples to back those up. Now, when you synthesize, you're including all those other skills. You're including recall, analysis, and evaluation. These often involve multiple sources. DBQs are a synthesis question. A DBQ, as I'm sure you know, is a document-based question. So on a DBQ, you might have a map, you might have a photograph, you might have some text, you might have some other visual. And you are taking all those different prompts, synthesizing them to reach a conclusion. Here are some examples. Would you rather be popular with an entire group without forming one close friend, or have one close friend but not be part of a group? 2. Assume that Earth is doomed and only 2 more people can be saved. Nominate 2 characters from fiction or drama. Identify why each character deserves inclusion. Next, what are the connections between sunspots and solar weather? And last, explain the synthesis of art and astronomy in society. Now, you noticed here there's really only one key word, and that would be synthesis. These questions rarely have the key words that you've learned in the other 3 types. So these questions have to be read with extra care, so you make sure that you fully understand the task that you're being asked. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and label each of the following questions with its type. Then come back. Our first question, television is more interesting than people. If it were not, we would have people standing in the corners of our rooms. Agree or disagree? Well, this is an evaluate question, and you can tell from that phrase, agree or disagree. That shows you that you're being asked to give your opinion. Number 2, trace how the continents were formed. Well, you see the word trace, you know that this is a recall question. You're being asked to give back information. Number 3, what is the theme of George Orwell's essay, Shooting an Elephant? Well, theme has to be inferred or figured out from other clues in the story. So you might use character, plot, setting, dialogue, and imagery to figure out the theme, which is the author's overall message about life. That tells you that you're doing an analyze question, because you're analyzing the parts of the story to reach a whole. And the last one, drawing from John Donne's Meditation 17 and Ernest Hemingway's novel For Whom the Bell Tolls, explain how you view the relationship of people to each other. Well, you've got 2 works here. You've got John Donne's Meditation 17 and Ernest Hemingway's novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Combining the 2 tells you that you're doing a synthesized question. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program, reread each of these 4 questions, and explain how you would answer each one. Follow the 5 steps that you learned earlier. Decide which question you would answer on an essay test if you had the choice. And then come back. Now, looking at this question, remember we said this was an evaluate, so you're asked to agree or disagree. What you would do is you would decide which side of this issue you're on. Do you think television is more interesting than people, or do you think people are more interesting than television? Once you figure that out, you would give that opinion, and then you would back it up with specific examples. So you might say, for example, people are more interesting than television, and you would give 3 examples. You might talk about your father, your mother, and your Aunt Alice, all of whom are very interesting people, and you would give examples of what they do that's very interesting. Second one, what you would do here is probably my brain dump. You would just write down a series of details, then go back and arrange those details in chronological or time order from the furthest back to the most recent, describing the formation of each continent in turn. So you would decide which continent you're going to take first, second, and so on, and explain how they are formed. Number 3, well, what I would say is people cannot commit horrible, heinous acts to appear honorable without looking very foolish. The elephant, I know, is a symbol for Burma, whose spirit the British are killing just as needlessly and wastefully as Orwell had killed the elephant. Now, I might choose to answer this specific question because I know that essay very, very well, and I have a lot of good details about that essay. So I'm comfortable understanding what those symbols represent. And I would analyze each symbol in turn to explain Orwell's theme or message about the British occupation of Burma around turn of the century to about 1940 when he was writing this. And the last one, drawing from John Donne's Meditation 17, well, what I would do is I would quote part of that meditation, and I would apply that to the novel For Whom the Bell Tolls. I might quote, no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never sent to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Well, that comes from the meditation. I would then apply that to what Hemingway says in his novel. Which one should you choose to answer if you're lucky enough to have the choice? You would choose the one that you know the most about. You would choose the one that you are most comfortable answering. So I personally would pick the one about Orwell because that's my field, literature, but somebody else might be much more comfortable writing about the continents. So if you have a choice of questions, don't just arbitrarily pick the first one. Read them all carefully, decide which one you can answer most fully, most completely, most comfortably, and use that question. Moving on, case. Case is the form of a noun or a pronoun that shows how it is used in a sentence. English has 3 cases. They're the nominative, the objective, and the possessive. It sounds like a lot, but actually we're not in bad shape because German, for example, has 6 cases, so we only have the 3. The nominative case, the pronoun, is used as the subject of the verb or as a predicate nominative. Some people call the nominative case the subject case. I remember it because nominative has the root nomen, and nomen means name. So I remember this is the name case, the subject case. The objective case, the pronoun is used as the direct object, the indirect object, or the object of a preposition. And in the possessive, the pronoun shows ownership. So to recap, we have the nominative, the name or subject case. We have the objective, it's used as an object. We have the possessive, it shows ownership. The pronoun changes depending on how it is used in the sentence. This chart shows the 3 cases. The nominative case, that's the column on the left. So that's used as subject. You would say, I threw the ball. He threw the ball, she threw the ball, we threw the ball. Now, in the object case, I might say, throw the ball to me. Me is the object. It happens to be the object of the preposition to. In the possessive case, the ball is mine. I'm showing possession. Or I might say, give me my ball. I wouldn't say, give me ball or give me eyeball. Sometimes you can figure this out because it just sounds weird. Other times you actually have to take the sentence apart and look at it. Look at the bottom of this chart. The one that people tend to get confused about, who and whoever, whom and whomever, whose and whose ever. They're actually extremely easy to use if you remember that who and whoever are nominative or subject, whom and whomever are the object, and whose and whose ever are the possessive. So this is a chart that you should keep track of because it will help you use these pronouns correctly. Let's take a look at the rules for the nominative case. Use the nominative case, the subject case, with the subject of a verb. I or me did the algebra homework. Well, would I say I did the algebra homework or me did the algebra homework? I would say I did the algebra homework. I'm the subject. You know that we, us, like math a lot. Well, we like math a lot. Latoya and I, or Latoya and me, did the homework. Well, I would say Latoya and I, because I would say I did the homework. We and they, or we and them. I would say, well, we and they, because they're both subjects. Here's a hint. Take the nouns or the pronouns separately and try the sentence that way. So you can say, Latoya did the homework, or you can say, I did the homework. Try the second one. We did the homework, or you can say, they did the homework. And that way you can hear that it's clearly the subject. You also use the nominative case with a predicate nominative. A predicate nominative is the noun or pronoun that follows a linking verb and identifies or renames the subject. It sounds complex, but it's really very, very easy. For example, we usually say, it is me, or it is them. We use the objective case, but the correct form is really the nominative case. We should say, it is I, or it is they. For example, the member of the lab who did the experiment is I. The linking verb there is, so it's the nominative I, not the objective me. The science winners were the Murphy twins and they. The linking verb is were, so the answer is they. Here's a hint if you're having trouble with it. Reverse the sentence. So say, I did the experiment, or they were the science winners. If you put it first, you put that pronoun first, you hear that it's in the subjective or nominative case. So you wouldn't say, me did the experiment, or them were the science winners. You would say, I did the experiment, or they were the science winners. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and circle the correct pronoun in each sentence. Then come back. The first two are the subject of the sentence. The second two are predicate nominatives. Richard and I study economics. He is my teacher. Let's go back to that first one. Richard studies economics. I study economics. I took it apart. Predicate nominative, the students are they. The principal is she. Let's do our reversal there. They are the students. She is the principal. Go back to our predicate nominative for a moment. Are is my linking verb in number 3. Is is my linking verb in number 4. Let's take a look now at our second case, the objective case. Use the objective case with a direct object. For example, Luke's solution to the math problem intrigued me. Direct object, me. Victoria's shoes no longer fit her. Object. Hector saw my and him at the math fair. Now, if you have a compound object, for example, you have my and him, just consider them separately. Hector saw my at the math fair. Hector saw him at the math fair. So when you break it into two sentences, you can clearly hear that Hector is the subject, he's doing the seeing, and him is the object. You also use the objective case with an indirect object. For example, the diagram gave us the answer, indirect. My brother sent me an email, and Brendan gave him a pencil. Last, use the objective case with the object of a preposition. Now remember, a preposition is a small word. One of the easiest ways to remember prepositions, one of my favorite ways, is draw a mountain and put a bunny rabbit next to it. Anything the bunny rabbit can do to the mountain is a preposition. So the bunny rabbit can go by the mountain, to the mountain. The bunny rabbit can go over the mountain, under the mountain. And so if you're stuck, you can't figure out what a preposition is, imagine the bunny rabbit in the mountain, and you'll probably get it. Number 1, sit by me. The preposition is by. Me is the object of that preposition. I welcome the chance to speak to them. The preposition is to. So you're using the objective case, them. And number 3, they understood why the puppy walked with us. With is the preposition, the object would be us. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and circle the correct pronoun in each sentence. Don't go by sound, go by the rules. Then come back. The first 2 are direct object, the second 2 are indirect object, and the last 1 object of a preposition. Direct object number 1, I congratulated her and the other winners. Break it apart. I congratulated her, I congratulated the other winners. Her is the direct object. Number 2, can we really believe him? Him is the direct object. Number 3, Jamal gave me a lot of help on the math. Jamal is my subject, me is my object. The test results gave us a boost in confidence, using the object. The frog jumped at us. At is my preposition. Last, we have the possessive case. You use the possessive case before nouns to show possession. Possession means ownership. George left, is it his, he, or him book at home? Well, thinking back to our chart, his is the possessive pronoun. That means the book belonged to George. We, or our class, studies vectors. Our is the possessive. The class belongs to us. You also use the possessive case before a gerund. Now, recall that a gerund is the form of a verb that acts as a noun. We use the possessive pronoun to show who is performing the action of the gerund. For example, her swimming has improved greatly. Her is the possessive case of the pronoun. Swimming is the gerund. Or we could say, Dave was tired of his studying after 10 minutes. His is the pronoun in the possessive case, and studying is our gerund. Here are some more examples. You, your, and your. reading helps you stay informed. Well, you is in the nominative and the objective case. Your is in the possessive case. And your is really the contraction you are. So that's an entirely different word. That's a contraction. That's not a case issue. So I know I don't want the nominative. I know I don't want the objective. I know I want the possessive because I have the gerund there reading. So the correct answer is your. Number 2, I have him, his, or he. Well, him is in the objective, his is the possessive, he is the nominative. Wearing a hat helped keep him warm. Well, wearing is my gerund, so I'm looking for something that's in the possessive case. Only his is in the possessive case. So my sentence reads, his wearing a hat helped keep him warm. Last one, do you mind my or me borrowing your calculator? Borrowing is my gerund, so I've got to find something that's in my possessive case, and that would be my borrowing, because me is in the objective. Now be careful here because it may not sound right to your ear, because you're used to hearing it wrong. So if you're not sure, rather than going by your ear, go by the correct form. So take a look at the sentence and say, okay, I've got a gerund here, I've got a this here, I've got a that here. Figure it out structurally, and you know you'll be correct. We use certain possessive pronouns alone to indicate ownership or possession. So we might say the calculator is mine, not yours. Take another look at this sentence again. Mine is the possessive pronoun, me is in the objective case. We've got yours and yours. The first yours is a real word, it's the possessive case. The second yours is not a word. I put that in just to sort of trick you a little bit. There would be no apostrophe ever in the word yours. There wouldn't be one after the S. There wouldn't be one before the S. So you can eliminate that immediately because that's not even a word. In number 2, is this book his or he's? His is correct, that's the possessive. He's is a contraction. He is. Well, that wouldn't make any sense at all. Is this book he is? Makes no sense. And number 3, no, it is theirs or theirs with the apostrophe. Just as there's no yours with an apostrophe, there is never any theirs with an apostrophe. So that has to be wrong from the beginning. So the correct answer is Theirs, the first word, with no apostrophe. I've mentioned this briefly, but I want to go over it again because it's so important. Don't confuse possessive pronouns with contractions. Remember, a contraction is a shorter form of a word. You take out letters and you put the apostrophe where the letters have been removed. So IT apostrophe S is a contraction for it is. The possessive pronoun is its with no apostrophe. Your, Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, is a contraction for you are. Your, without the E, without the apostrophe, is the possessive pronoun. Their, they are, is the contraction. Their, T-H-E-I-R, is the possessive pronoun. And whose, W-H-O apostrophe S, is a contraction for who is. Whose, W-H-O-S-E, is the possessive pronoun. One other word on this before we leave it. There, and there. The first one, T-H-E-Y apostrophe, R-E is the contraction, they are. The second, T-H-E-I-R, is the possessive pronoun, and T-H-E-R-E, entirely separate word, indicates place, as in over there. Do not confuse those 3 words. Also, I want to go back to a few others. ITS, your, and whose. Some people create their own words. They have ITS apostrophe. We've seen YOURS apostrophe. Can't do it, guys. Just take a look at the way they are here. This is all you have. You cannot add apostrophes. So now what I would like you to do is pause the program and circle the correct pronoun in each sentence, and then come back. The first two show possession, the second two show gerund, and the last one is used alone. Possession. The teacher asked for their homework. The homework belonged to them, so I'm using T-H-E-I-R. I'm not using they, and I'm not using the contraction they are. It might help you if you actually say the contraction as the two words. So if you say the teacher asked for they, their, and they are homework, you'll hear it then more easily. Number two, your, and I'm going to use my trick, you are grades have been outstanding. Well, once I do that, I can hear it. Your grades have been outstanding. I need the possessive pronoun because the grades belong to you. With the gerund, number three, I spoke to him about him driving. Well, the gerund is driving, so I need the possessive form. She and her acting is excellent. Acting is the gerund, so I need the possessive her. Using the possessive pronoun alone. Is the ticket hers or hers? And we said earlier that you cannot add apostrophes, so reading it again, is the ticket hers or not a word? It has to be the first choice. Punctuation, especially apostrophes, is one of the trickiest elements of writing. Video-aided instruction has a great program on punctuation. It's called English Grammar Punctuation, and it'll teach you the ins and outs of using commas, semicolons, colons, apostrophes, dashes, and other marks of punctuation comfortably and correctly. But in this program, we'll address two of the most common punctuation mistakes. Using commas correctly with introductory and interrupting phrases, compound sentences and items in a list, and using apostrophes correctly to show possession with nouns and pronouns. I highly recommend that you use that other program, English Grammar Punctuation. If you're finding that you're not really sure how to use punctuation, or your papers are coming back with a lot of red marks on them because you're not sure about the rules of standard English punctuation. Now let's take a look at using commas with introductory phrases and interrupting phrases. Introductory phrases obviously come at the beginning of sentences, and interrupting phrases obviously interrupt the sentence by coming in the middle. First, use a comma after a long prepositional phrase or a dependent clause that introduces a sentence. You may have heard this guideline. Use the comma where you would take a breath. Unfortunately, that's not really reliable. And it's one of those things that's become commonly known, but you're much better off figuring out if you have a prepositional phrase or a dependent clause. So let's take a look at these. In the first few lines of the second chapter, well, I know that that's a prepositional phrase because I have that preposition in. And it's long. So I can say, okay, this makes sense to me. In the first few lines of the second chapter, comma, the author begins to refer to his main character by the nickname Freddy. The second one, although typical lizards have 4 legs ending in clawed toes, comma, several types of lizards have reduced limbs or no limbs at all. I said earlier, use a comma after a long prepositional phrase or a dependent clause that introduces a sentence. You always use it after a dependent clause, regardless of its length. The dependent clause here is, although typical lizards have 4 legs ending in clawed toes. Now on my prepositional phrase, I had said to you a long prepositional phrase. Well, the one in the first few lines of the second chapter is very, very long. How do you know what long is? I would say as a general rule of thumb on a prepositional phrase, anything over about 3 words, you should separate with a comma. Also, use a comma before and after an interrupting phrase instead of parentheses. My little brother, comma, who still sleeps with a nightlight, comma, proved to be the bravest one in the family that night. My interrupting phrase is, who still sleeps with a nightlight. And I set that off with commas. I also use commas with compound sentences. Remember, a compound sentence is two independent clauses connected by a coordinating conjunction. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. I hadn't studied for my math test at all, comma, but I still managed to get a B+. So right before that coordinating conjunction, I put my comma. I also use a comma with a list. Every item in the series is set off with a comma. Next semester, comma, I plan to take U.S. history, comma, English literature, comma, and introductory oil painting. Now, some writers do not put the comma before the and. So they would have next semester, comma, I plan to take U.S. history, comma, English literature, and introductory oil painting. I recommend including that comma because I think that it really does make your sentences clearer and easier to read. Turning now to apostrophes with possessive nouns. People tend to put apostrophes with plural nouns rather than possessive nouns. And that is incorrect. They're used with possessive nouns. You add an apostrophe and an S to show the possessive case of most singular nouns. For example, the book of the boy becomes the boy's book. The report of the witness becomes the witness's report. Now look at witness. It ends in S. I still follow the rule. I put apostrophe S. But you say to me, gee, that sounds a little silly. It's got 3 S's in a row. Well, if the word is difficult to say, you can drop that S. So Rozakis's program should be Rozakis apostrophe. Dickens' novels should be Dickens apostrophe. The only rule that I have there is be consistent. If you're going to drop that final S with a word that ends in S, do it on all the words that end in S. Don't do it willy-nilly, because that's going to confuse your readers. Number 2, add just an apostrophe to show the possessive case of plural nouns that end in S or ES. So the sand of the beaches is the beach's sand. B-E-A-C-H-E-S apostrophe. Add an apostrophe and an S to show the possessive case of plural nouns that do not end in S or ES. Children's toys, children is plural, the singular is child. Women's awards, plural, the singular is woman. Add just an apostrophe to show possession of compound nouns that end in S or ES. Add an apostrophe and an S if the compound noun does not end in S. Remember, a compound noun is 2 or more nouns. Girl Scouts, compound noun, Girl Scouts projects. Baker and Taylor, 2 nouns, Baker and Taylor's books. Follow the exact same rule with time and amount. 1 day's work, $1 worth, 5 minutes run, 2 cents worth. Now with pronouns, you just add an apostrophe and an S with the indefinite pronouns to show possession. Remember that an indefinite pronoun does not name a specific person, place, or thing. Another, anyone, everyone, nobody, no one, one, someone. Those are all indefinite pronouns. So another's essay, anyone's guess, everyone's gain, nobody's sweater, one's country, someone's pens. It's always apostrophe and S. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and add the apostrophes as needed. Then come back. Number 1, Jill's essay was excellent. I have Jill apostrophe S. So it's Jill apostrophe S. Now number 2, Charles's logic was unassailable. Charles ends with S. So I technically could have CH A-R-L-E-S, apostrophe S, and that would be completely correct. But I decided it doesn't sound that smooth, so I dropped that second S. The Rio Grande forms one of Texas's borders. Same thing. That should be T-E-X-A-S apostrophe S, but I decided that Texas's sounded weird. And I was matching Texas to Charles. Remember I said to you earlier, either keep all the S's or drop them. Number 4, I have compound. Where is your great-grandmother's picture? Grandmother apostrophe S. 5, we saved part of each month's earnings. H apostrophe S. And 6, that must be someone's dog. Indefinite pronoun, someone apostrophe S. Now, earlier we discussed contractions briefly. I'd like to focus on them now for a bit because they're so important. First of all, there are some teachers who do not want you to use contractions in formal academic writing. If that is the case, learn this, but do not use contractions because they're considered an informal type of writing. If you do decide to use contractions, use the apostrophe as the placeholder to show where one or more letters have been removed. For example, now in R not, I take out the O, so I put the apostrophe there, A-R-E-N apostrophe T. In cannot, I'm taking out 2 letters, an N and an O, so it becomes can't. In I will, I'm taking out the W and the I, put the apostrophe right there, I'll. I am, I'm taking out just the A, becomes I'm. And I would, taking out a whole lot of letters, the W, O, U, and L, and that becomes I'd. So it's not the number of letters, it's simply putting the apostrophe there as the placeholder. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and create a contraction with each word pair. Then come back. Is not becomes isn't. We will becomes we'll. They would is they'd. Notice how many letters are removed there. She is she's. Who would is who'd. Should not is shouldn't. They will is they'll. You are is your. Who is whose. Were not is weren't. Did not is didn't. And you will is you'll. And again, just remember, in some formal academic papers, contractions are not acceptable. When in doubt, check with your teacher or your instructor to make sure that you are allowed to use contractions in your papers. Now, turning to commonly confused words. You want to upgrade your writing by using words correctly. In the previous program, we talked about vocabulary. It's important to use the word that you want and the word that you need to convey your meaning. Homonyms are words with the same spelling and or pronunciation, but completely different meanings. So beam has different meanings depending on how it's used. A beam can be a ray of light. A beam can be a girder or support. Completely different. A ray of light and a girder or support has nothing to do with it. Night, 2 different spellings, but the exact same pronunciation, N-I-G-H-T, K-N-I-G-H-T. Night as in not day, and night as in knight in shining armor. You've got course and course, completely different spellings, same pronunciation. Course with the O-A is rough. Course with the O-U is a path. Bridle and bridle, again, same pronunciation, different spellings. Bridle with the A-L is related to a wedding. Bridle with the D-L-E is part of a horse's harness. Pay close attention to commonly confused words. They're small, but they matter a lot. Also, there are a tremendous number of them. Here are some. Air is atmosphere. Air is to make a mistake. a lot is many, a lot is divide. Altar is a platform for religious services. Alter is to change. Allowed is given permission. Allowed is spoken out loud or verbally. Are is a form of to be. Are is belonging to us. Bare is undressed. Bare, same spelling, is unadorned or plain. Bare, different spelling, is an animal and also means to carry or to hold. Born is to be brought forth by birth or to be native. Born means endured. A bore is a tiresome person, and a boar is a male pig. Brake is a device that slows a vehicle, and break means to crack or destroy. Breath is measurement, and breath is to inhale or to exhale. It's embarrassing as well as confusing when you use the wrong word. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and supply the homonym for each of these words. Define each word and then come back. Flue goes with flue. The first one means to fly in the air, and the second one is part of a chimney. Heart goes with heart. Heart is the organ in your body. Heart is also an animal. Forward and forward. The first is to move, progress. The second one is the opening part of a book. Gamble is to wager money, and gamble is to frolic. Gilt is a thin covering of hammered gold on jewelry or on buildings, and guilt is a feeling of sorrow or repentance. Imminent and eminent. Imminent means about to occur. Eminent means well-known or famous. Lesson and lesson. A lesson is something that you learn in school, something that you're taught. To lessen is to relieve or to reduce. Load and load. The first refers to mining. The second refers to something that we carry. Metal is a character trait. Metal is an ore. Residence and residence. Residence is a place where you live. The residents are the people who live there. Here are a few more commonly confused words because they matter so much in your writing. Bored is a piece of wood or a group of directors. Bored, spelled differently, means not interested when you tune out. All together and all together, they're important because they're used a lot. All together as two words means all at one time. All together as one word means completely, like altogether finished. Already and already, one word and two words. As one word, it means previously. As two words, it means completely prepared. I'm all ready. Where and where. The first one is to have on the body. The second is a location. I get that a lot in student papers, so be careful with where and where. They're very often confused. Arc and arc. The first one with the C is part of a circle's circumference. The second one is a boat. Ascent and ascent. The first is to move up. The second is to agree. Birth and birth. The first one is a sleeping area in a ship. The second is being born. And here's a couple of others. They're not homonyms, but they are often confused. To imply is to suggest. To infer is to suppose. To prescribe is to dictate. To subscribe is to register. So when you prescribe, you might prescribe a medicine or a medication. When you subscribe to a magazine or you advocate, as in to subscribe to a theory. Those are not as often confused because people don't pay attention to them, but they're the kind of mistakes that do tend to come up because those words, when you need them, there really is nothing else you can use to prescribe a medicine but to use the word prescribe. So there's really not a synonym. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and choose the best word for each blank from the options given. Then come back. I drove by the mall but decided not to buy anything. The first one is by, preposition. Second one is verb, to purchase something. Pay close attention to that one because that one comes up a lot in your writing. The Capitol building, which houses Congress, is located in the capital of the United States, Washington, D.C. Notice that the first capital, in addition to having the OL, has a capital letter. That distinguishes it also from the second one, lowercase c and an A. Number 3, conscience and conscious. Slightly different pronunciation. Conscience is the feeling you get of right or wrong, and conscious means to be awake, not to be sleeping or in a coma. The gang leader was able to buy and sell drugs even from his prison cell. Buy and sell, sell is to offer items for sale, and a prison cell is the room that you stay in a monastery or when you're in jail. The perfume had such a terrible scent that it wasn't even worth a cent. Scent with an S refers to smell, and cent with a C refers to a penny. The actor was so emotionally stoic that his lack of affect had a very negative effect on his audience. I'm exaggerating the pronunciation of affect and effect, so you hear the difference. Lack of affect is facial expression, and effect is result or influence. Number 7, I had just tied my shoelaces moments before, but they were loose yet again. I felt like I was going to lose my mind. Now those have a different pronunciation. Loose and lose. Loose with the 2 O's means not fastened. Lose means to misplace something. 8, it's going to be a very difficult test. Mrs. Chen said it will cover the course's entire textbook and all its lectures. I read the first one as the contraction because it is the contraction, it is. Though of course it's pronounced it's and it's. So the first is the contraction, the second is the possessive pronoun. 9, same thing, I've got possessive pronoun contractions there. The kids are playing their favorite game on the playground. They're having a lot of fun over there. The first there is the possessive pronoun, the second is the contraction, they are, the third is the place. Put a little star in your book there, or write that down in a separate paper, because that is a very, very commonly confused group of words. If you want to play a soccer scrimmage properly, you shouldn't have more than 11 people on each of the 2 teams. 13 is too many. The first 2 is the preposition, the second 2 is the number, the third 2 shows excess, too much. Some of my favorite artists, e.g. N.C. Wyeth and Howard Pyle, are famous American book illustrators, i.e. their work brings back fond memories of adventure stories from my childhood. Those are abbreviations of different Latin phrases, and they're used differently. E.g. means for example, and i.e. means that is. 12, when you feel a sneeze or cough coming on, you're supposed to turn away from others and cover your nose and mouth. I'm going to read it uncontracted. When you feel a sneeze or cough coming on, you are supposed to turn away from others and cover your nose and mouth. The first is the contraction, the second is the possessive pronoun. It might help you with my trick. You notice I was reading the contractions uncontracted. It helps you hear what that word really is. 13, everybody has problems with this one. Last month, the dog lay beneath the table in the kitchen, right where we had laid down the new tile floor. Next week, I'm sure she will lie under the coffee table in the den, right where we are going to lay down the new carpeting. In your study guide, you'll find a chart of lie and lay. Refer to the chart to understand how to use those correctly, because those are quite confusing. If Henrique performs at his best in tomorrow's race, then he will be totally satisfied. This makes him different from many other athletes. He doesn't feel that he has to be better than anyone else. Then, the first one shows result. Different from is an idiom. Those two are used together. Better than shows comparison. Than is my comparison. 15. Today she passed the donut shop on her way to the gym, but she didn't stop. In the past, she would have stopped for a chocolate donut for sure. First one is my verb. Now let's take a look at degree. English has 3 degrees: positive, comparative, and superlative. Positive is the base form where no comparison is being made. I have a big ball. I have small portion. Comparative means two people, place, things, or ideas are being compared. This ball is bigger than that one. This portion is smaller than that one. I have 2 things. Superlative means that you have 3 or more things. This is the biggest ball of all. This is the smallest portion of all. So positive, there's no comparison. Comparative, there are 2 items. Superlative, there are 3. Now in English, some words form regular comparative and superlative, and some form irregular comparative and superlative forms. The regular is ER or more for comparative. The superlative is EST or most. You never use more and ER together. You never used most and EST together. Your general rule is use ER or EST with 2-syllable words, 1 or 2, like big-er. Use more or most with 3 or more syllable words. So you would say the most tremendous. You wouldn't say the tremendousest. And you would never, under any circumstances, say the more tremendouser. So you get ER or more for comparative, EST or most for superlative. Most of the words in English are formed that way. However, we do have some irregular comparisons. If good were regular, it'd be good, gooder, goodest, or good, more good, most good. We don't do that. We have good, better, and best. If bad were regular, it'd be bad, badder, and baddest. Not correct. We have bad, worse, and worst with a T. If you're not sure if the word is regular or irregular, look it up in the dictionary and it'll have the forms for you. So now what I would like you to do is pause the program and choose the best word for each blank from the options given. Then come back. She stood 4 foot 5 inches in the 2nd grade. By far, she was the tallest in her class. Her sister was even taller. Now, I emphasize the est. I'm using the superlative form because she is being compared to more than 3 people. She's being compared to everyone in the class. I used EST rather than most because tall has 1 syllable. Remember, more and most are used with most 3 or more syllable words. Now then, I compare her to her sister. So I'm comparing 2 things. So now I have the comparative form. I'm saying taller. Number 2, it was certainly the lesser of 2 evils. So I have 2 things. I'm using the comparative. It's ER. She made meatloaf well, but meatballs even better. Now I have an irregular because I'm using the word good. I've got well and I've got better. I use the irregular forms. 4, the dog's behavior was bad, but my toddler's behavior was worse. Well, bad is not being compared to anything. That's your base form. Worse, I'm using comparative. I have 2 things. I'm comparing the dog and the toddler. 5, Dan might have been the better swimmer of the 2 boys, but Frank was the best overall athlete in the entire school. Dan is better, I'm comparing 2 boys, that's my comparison, but Frank is the best overall, I'm comparing 3 or more things. Now, in English, some words have only 1 meaning. Some words have more than 1 meaning because they have different uses. In some cases, the word's meaning and its part of speech are determined by its context, how it is used in the sentence. The context can change the meaning. And as a result, you've got to pay attention to the surrounding words and phrases. For example, let's take a look at the word train. Train can be an adjective, a verb, or a noun. We went to the train station to ride the train. Well, train station, train is being used as an adjective. To ride the train, that's being used as a noun. Did you train the puppy? Well, now you're doing an action, so that's a verb. The dress had a long train, that's the fabric underneath, that is used as a noun. So, pay close attention to how the word is being used in the sentence to know exactly what it is. Who, which, and that can also be a little bit confusing, but I'll make it easy for you. Who refers to people and people only. Which refers to things and things only. That refers to both people and things, but try not to use it for people. That package comes from my aunt that lives on the West Coast. I would prefer that package comes from my aunt who lives on the West Coast. So if you remember, who for people, which for things, and that for both people and things, but try to use it mainly for things. One last note. Many students make a lot of mistakes with spelling and capitalization. It's these kinds of seemingly simple errors that can really stick out and give your readers a bad impression of your writing. We're not going to cover these issues in depth here, however, because video-aided instruction has devoted an entire program to the rules of these subjects called English Grammar, Spelling and Capitalization. I strongly recommend that you view this program if you have some problems in these areas. It is a fabulous program. But for your reference, we provided a list of commonly misspelled words in your study guide. Study these words so you can never misspell any of them in your writing. Now, you may say to me, oh, I don't have to worry about that. I have a spell checker on my computer. Yes and no. Sometimes you're going to get the wrong word, and you may not recognize it. So don't rely on your spell checker. Rely on learning the words yourself. Now what I would like you to do is pause the program and choose the correctly spelled word from the pairs of words given. Then come back. Number 1, receive, follows the I before E, except after C, or is sounded as A, as a neighbor and way. So it's I before E, except after C, and the case here is after the C, so you flip them. So it's R-E-C-E-I-V-E. Dependent with an E, inadvertent with an E. Fulfill has one L followed by the two L's. Prerogative, dropped an R. License, C, not an S. That one's hard because of the way we pronounce it. Exercise, common mistake, using an S instead of a C. Grammar, I'm mispronouncing it purposely so you hear it rather than grammar. Judgment, people tend to add an E, there's no E there. And separate, correct spelling with two A's rather than S-E-P-E-R. So, to upgrade your writing, you have to upgrade your skills. Use these methods. Answer the question that you have been asked. Understand case. Use punctuation correctly. Distinguish between commonly confused words. Understand comparisons. Analyze sentences to determine the meaning of multiple meaning words. And learn the rules for who, which, and that. Well, we've come to the end of our program. I hope you found this instruction helpful and have learned some things that you can use to take your written communication to the next level. Thanks for watching.
Many students positively dread research paper assignments. Those hours and hours spent fruitlessly hunting for the right books and articles, squinting at screens of irrelevant search engine results, and scribbling useless notes on disorganized scraps of paper. But writing a research paper doesn't have to be such a stressful, time-consuming, and boring ordeal. Video-Aided Instructions Writing a Great Research Paper series is your step-by-step guide to constructing a paper that's technically correct, refreshingly original, and truly compelling. With this user-friendly series, you can recognize the value of true scholarship, master essential research techniques, learn the insider secrets that the best writers know, dramatically improve your writing, and keep yourself motivated, productive, and relaxed throughout the entire process. Be sure to view the complete 10-DVD series, picking an A+ topic, starting your research, finding the best sources, plagiarism and other pitfalls, taking notes, how to be persuasive, writing your first draft, quoting, citing, and paraphrasing, formatting your paper, and perfecting your final draft. Now you can successfully meet the challenge of writing a great research paper and earn a grade you can be proud of with video-aided instruction. Do you want to get your GED? Well, you're in luck. Video-aided instruction makes it easier than ever before. Our one-of-a-kind series prepares you for even the toughest questions on the 5 GED tests. Be sure to view GED Language Arts Reading, Language Arts Writing, Mathematics, Science, Social Studies, and Calculator Essentials. Let us guide you toward that all-important diploma, a better job, and of course, higher self-esteem.
When you're serious about learning an academic subject or scoring high on a test, there's just one name to know: video-aided instruction. We don't waste your time with goofy skits, corny jokes, or silly sing-alongs. We get right to the point. Real teaching by real teachers. Visit us online at videoaidedinstruction.com to learn more about our exciting line of educational programs. As we say here at Video-Aided Instruction, press play to learn.